Tori.
It's Chanel.
And welcome back to episode 7 of Glad We Talked podcast.
Yay. What's going on? What's the 411?
The 411. It was a busy week back in the office.
How's dry January going?
Dry January, yes.
Yes.
That thing. I've noticed a few times where I really was like, oh, I wish I could have a glass of wine.
When are those times?
More social times.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, but all in all, it's still going well and I'm still going strong.
That's good.
Yeah.
Have you noticed a difference in like how you feel every day?
Not really.
Okay.
Not yet. I
Okay.
don't know. We'll see. I'm only halfway through.
Do you feel more energized?
Maybe.
Okay.
I'm definitely sleeping a lot on the weekends,
Mm.
which is nice.
Because sometimes when you drink wine, you like stay up.
Yeah.
Because of the sugar or whatever.
Or you don't feel as rested. I got 12 hours of sleep on Saturday into Sunday.
That sounds wonderful.
I don't know the last time I got 12 hours of
Good
sleep.
for you.
And I woke up and I was like, oh my God, I can't believe it's almost 10:30.
Wow.
It was amazing.
Proud of you.
Thank you. How are you doing?
I'm good. I've been like consuming a lot of content. I haven't been like doing much. I've been trying to like lay low. I finished a book that I was reading for like 3 months, so I finally
Wow.
finished it.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
What
so
book was it?
It was Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. She writes like a lot of the popular books right now. Like she also wrote Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, which is like my favorite book. It's so good. It's one of those
good.
books that you read and it like stays with you.
I'm looking to get to read more this year, so I think that will be...
Seven Husbands is really good,
Okay.
of Evelyn Hugo. So I will lend it to you. I've also been watching a lot of TV. So I watched this new movie called The Menu last night.
Who, what, where, when, where?
You know the...
I don't know anything about it.
Okay. So you know the girl from Queen's Gambit, Anya
Yes.
Taylor-Joy?
Yes.
She's in it. She's like the main
Okay.
character. It was really good.
Okay.
I really liked it. It's basically like a dark comedy. It's a little bit scary for me.
Scary?
Yeah.
It's about food.
No.
Oh.
So you think it is. It's like these people, it's basically like Anya Taylor-Joy and this guy that she's with go to this island to do a menu tasting, but there's like twists and turns and, you know, they become part of the it's like this whole thing.
Oh, man. It's
Yeah.
like, and then there was none.
Yeah. So, but the twists, there wasn't really a
wildest.
twist, but it, like the way that they kind of build
Yeah.
up to it is really well done. I liked it. And it all makes it feel like it's part of the menu. Like, it's really interesting.
Wow.
I liked it. And I don't really like scary things, but I did like it. And I've
Okay.
also been watching a lot of reality TV. Love Island UK comes back. It's premiering tonight in the UK, so it's going to take a while to get to come on
Oh.
Hulu.
I haven't really watched it, so maybe
Oh my
I'll watch it with
gosh.
you.
You should.
Okay.
You know, I'm obsessed.
I know.
I love it.
Okay, well then I have new reading material and a new show to look forward to and a new movie to watch.
Look at all this content I'm giving you.
Thank you.
You
I
have
really
stuff to do for
appreciate
dry
it.
January.
I know. I'm being antisocial. Actually, I have a party next weekend, so that's another test for dry
That's another
January.
test.
Yeah. So a lot to think about, but new content to digest this year. So thank you.
Yeah. You're so welcome.
Should we do some outstanding items? I think we only have one.
Yeah.
Okay. So last week you said something about like using chapstick meant like frequently. You had to use it more frequently and it wasn't actually a good thing.
Yes.
And I looked that up and I found a Well and Good article.
Fact checked me.
I fact checked you. I found a Well and Good article that said that it is in fact true that you shouldn't keep constantly applying chapstick or lip balm because it actually dehydrates to some degree and it's like causes your lips to chap more. But they do recommend using it 3 times, at least 3 times a day, which is in the morning after you eat or drink. So maybe that's, you know, breakfast, lunch, dinner, and then before you go to bed.
That's too little for me.
But then you have
I put it on like 8 times a day.
Oh my goodness.
I don't like that feeling when it's not on and you're like licking your lips. Like, I don't like that.
Yeah. Well, actually, licking your lips, they said, is also not good because
No, it
that
dries it out.
saliva breaks down the tissue on your lips, that delicate tissue, like it would food, because that's what's initially happening as soon as you start eating. Your digestive process starts. So that's why licking your lips, it like causes your lips to chap more.
You really did research.
I did. And I found this really interesting as someone that checks the ingredients and labels. If you're addicted to your chapstick, the doctor that they interviewed, Whitney Bowe, she's a doctor in New York City and certified dermatologist and the author of Dirty Looks. She said that you should look for the following irritating ingredients, which are menthol, cinnamon, and camphor. So check your labels in your ingredient list on your chapsticks because that's like maybe causing you to reapply more often and it's actually not helping you but irritating you. And instead, you should look for hydrating ingredients like shea butter.
PSA for chopsticks. Wow.
Yeah.
Who knew?
And SPF is an added bonus.
Okay.
So now I want to go and check all of my lip balms and chapsticks.
I know. I'm so upset. Like, what if my favorite chapstick has these things? What am I going to do?
I'm an old school chapstick, like the brand name chapstick. I have a million of them.
I like those. Those are good.
I know, but I wonder if there's like camphor or anything in it. I know I use Blistex too in the winter, and I think that has menthol
I
in
was
it.
just about to say that. It has to.
Yeah.
It has that written all over it.
Yeah. So
Okay, well, thanks for doing that fun research.
you're welcome. I hope this helps someone that is either addicted to their lip gloss or chapstick, or if you just need a new one, now you know what to look for.
Yeah. Should we get into our HR episode?
Yeah, I was so excited for this episode. You could tell by the tone of my voice from last episode at the end. Our guest, Julia, was so lovely.
Yeah, so we recorded with her this past weekend, and it was a really good little sit-down chat we had with her. She is just so great. She speaks so well.
I was fascinated.
I know. I just like love listening to her talk.
Did you see me like just staring at her
Yeah.
multiple times and I
getting lost in what she said?
Exactly. I would be just like so engaged in
Yeah.
listening to her that I forgot I had to talk back and
Yeah.
keep the podcast going. So thank God you were there too, because I sometimes was like, who even knew?
I know. So she gave us a lot of good HR and career tips. I mean, we focus mainly on new year, new job, but there's also some like other fun nuggets in there from listener questions. There's just so much good information, and I'm really excited for everyone to listen.
Yeah, so let's get into it without further ado.
Okay, so we are here with Julia. Hi, Julia.
Hi.
Julia is an HR professional, guest of the podcast today, a dear friend of mine, now a dear friend of Tori, previous Hoboken resident, and now you're back. Welcome
I'm
to
back.
the podcast, Julia.
Thank you. Good to be back in the Square Mile. Good to be back with my ladies. It's
Wait.
weird being called an HR professional. It's like one of those things you achieve after certain years of seniority in the role.
I think you've earned it.
I think I have as well.
It's a hard industry to be in.
And ever evolving.
So obviously we're going to go over some HR stuff today, and I think we want to like break the ice a little bit first.
Okay.
So Tori and I did these questions from a Women's Health magazine link early on in the podcast, and we asked each other the questions just to kind of get to know each other a little bit. So we pulled some for you, and Tori's going to ask you a few.
Bring it on.
a few little icebreakers to get us all going. What is your favorite way to spend a day off?
I would have to say in this moment in time, ideally it would be if the weather was nice, taking my dog to the beach for like a morning stroll and have her run around a bit, go to the boardwalk, have an element of brunch or lunch with someone to catch up with, work out a little bit, and like not wake up tired, like wake up refreshed,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
like ready to like have a day off, because like who wakes up refreshed anymore?
Not me.
Yeah. So yeah, just an element of being social, definitely an element with my dog and the beach because I'm a beach bum.
Right. And you relocated during the pandemic to Asbury.
I did. I was in Hoboken for 8 years and I moved to Asbury last December, so it's been about a year.
What a transition from the city grind to living on the beach.
It was perfect though. It was like I've always wanted to end up down there, and like one silver lining of COVID was fully remote roles, and taking an HR role to have that ultimate dream was great, and I'm so lucky for it. And it's definitely changed my lifestyle, my actual style of clothes, and just
I like
pace
what
of
you're
life.
wearing. It's cute. You got like a black bodysuit, some denim on.
You always look
Thanks.
cute.
It's a very Tory fit, so I like it.
I feel like this is like the Hoboken uniform, a black top,
Yeah.
and jeans. I tried to be my Hoboken gal again today.
You never not look cute.
No, I thought that was my style, and I'm like, oh no, this is a Hoboken thing.
Yeah, it's like when you go out and you see like every girl in the same sneakers and top. Like
It's
I
actually
am that
true.
girl.
Right.
Walking around Hoboken, a lot of the people are wearing the same thing.
Yeah.
It's funny.
Cue identity crisis.
Not in Long Island City, let me tell you that.
Okay, cool. So let's hop into the second one because we want to get to the meatier part of the podcast.
Okay.
What is an essential part of your daily routine?
I think movement for sure. Not that I necessarily, in all honesty, do movement every day beyond walking my dog, but for what I do in my job, which is a lot of taking in other people's emotions, like movement is what helps me kind of process that or get prepared for that type of day.
What type of movement are you doing?
More like low impact these days. The back and knees ain't what they used to be.
Julia and I went on a hike when we were together in the Poconos like 2 weeks ago.
Oh my God.
And we quit mid hike. Like we walked back because everyone was like forging forward. It was very icy.
Yeah, in our defense, there was like literally a sheet of ice on the
Yeah.
ground we were walking on top of, and we did not have the right shoes for it.
No. And we were like, you have a bad back. I have a calf thing. Like, we're going back.
Yeah, together we made one person.
Yeah.
So it would have become like Blair Witch Project or something that we would have been carrying each other back home afterwards.
Oh my God. So we just did an episode on fitness and
Yes.
movement, I guess. And do you do movement every day, or are you doing it?
So my
Times a week?
everyday movement at minimum is walking my dog.
Right.
And one thing,
empathize
I'm
with
probably
that.
gonna have my dog in my answer for everything. So everyone,
That's
be
how I
prepared
was.
for
So don't worry. We're here for it. We are dog people.
So like at minimum, it's that getting me out of the house every day. But I do Melissa Wood Health Pilates as often as I can, and that ranges from like I don't do more than 20 minutes, and some are as small as 8 minutes. And I think something that I learned during COVID was like you don't have to kill yourself working out to like see results or feel good, and just that minimal movement helps me kind of just like get in check for the day. I'm a morning movement workout person. And then I'm trying to do more like stretching and things like that. But like I find stretching harder than like workouts itself to do.
It is
I
its
think
own workout.
Yeah, it's like almost like meditating, like being more still and breathing through that weird discomfort that you have when you
Yep.
do stretch.
That's why I don't like yoga.
Yeah.
Because of that.
I don't like
feeling.
it, but I just like, our ailments, like
Yeah.
spine health is so important.
I know.
Yeah,
know.
it is. I love yoga.
I know
so-
you do.
But it does connect your mind and body in a way that impatience
Yeah.
kind of, you get used to it and you learn to breathe through them, and it's
My first
try it.
like reaction and emotion in life is anger. So I love workouts that like are making me feel like I could crush like a brick wall, like through a brick wall. So like to go from that to doing like yoga is
Yeah.
just
Very different.
hard. Yeah.
I get
It's like
that.
opposite.
Yeah. Like you'll see me on the treadmill and I look like I'm about to like
Let's
go
run
fight
through a
someone.
wall.
Yeah.
You need that like aggressive motivation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
And like way to blow off some steam.
Mhm.
That's interesting though. You're so self-aware. Like my first reaction to life is anger.
Therapy.
Yeah.
Therapy, it teaches you a lot.
big fans of therapy over here.
Definitely.
Okay, and our last one, because we all love a little horoscope intuitiveness to our podcast. What is your horoscope sign?
I am an Aquarius.
You're right. Okay, so that's your sun sign,
That's my sun sign. And then what's the other sign?
moon, and rising.
My rising is Scorpio.
Oh,
Ooh.
that's
I'm
how you
not-
present yourself.
I'm
which
not
is, I can see
surprised.
that for
She's
you. yeah.
feisty.
I can be really intense, and that resembles a Scorpio.
And what's your moon?
I don't remember.
That's like your emotional sign.
Whatever cries the most.
Pisces
Okay.
or Cancer.
Cancer. Mitch is a Cancer. I was like, we can actually figure it out.
And your
so.
birthday's coming up soon, so
It
happy almost
is.
birthday.
Thank you.
Yeah. What are you gonna do for your birthday?
I'm having girlfriends down to Asbury Park for dinner, and then we're going to hopefully go out later to this place, Watermark, that's on the beach, and zhuzh up a little bit, and I just want to dance. I love dancing.
I get that.
Yeah.
I can relate.
True Jersey girl.
Yeah, and I love my birthday because like I have so many different little like groups of friends that no other time will those groups get together besides my birthday. So not that I'm a birthday diva, but I love my birthday for that reason.
Okay.
I love to hear it. Okay, should we get into some fun work stuff?
Let's do it.
Okay, so I think it'd be helpful if you gave a little background on how you got to where you are. Did you always want to work in this field? And just tell us a little bit about yourself and your career.
Yeah, so I went to school for psychology, so a little bit of same but different. I thought I was going to be a guidance counselor, and then my senior year, I was like, I only babysat and did hostessing for summer jobs and jobs during college. So I never had an internship. So I was like, oh shoot, like, am I going to go to grad school and like put myself into debt? And like, I haven't experienced anything else besides like what I've just only learned or like babysitting. So an alum from my sorority reached out to us with these internship opportunities at L'Oreal. And at the time I was obsessed with beauty. It was like at the very beginning of YouTube vloggers and like doing makeup and things like that. And I was so into it back when I had all the time in the world to do things like that and all the money to buy all the makeup. One was for HR, and I was like, okay, that's kind of like psych, and it's being a guidance counselor for corporate America in a way. So let me just like, why not interview? So I interviewed. I fell in love with it was supporting the head of HR for the luxury division of L'Oreal, which is like our designer higher end brands that L'Oreal owned and owns. So I got the role, and it was a 1 year long internship. So I was like, okay, if it's 1 year, like if I don't want to do it, it's over. If I continue want to do it, then now I know something I didn't know otherwise. I ended up being at L'Oreal for 8 years in different facets of HR. I moved into talent development. I moved into campus recruitment, which was amazing from a recruitment perspective, getting to travel a lot. I then went into being a sales generalist, which is basically an HR for the sales and field population. After that, I went over to Kiehl's and I did retail HR, a little bit of like investigations, and then as well as corporate HR. And then I took a new job outside of L'Oreal, and COVID not started, but like the world ended like 2 days into my job, and I went remote in this new job, which was like crazy to be first new job in 8 years or first new company, and like
fully remote,
getting to know people and the level you need to in HR from a remote capacity at a time that we'd never done that before was so odd.
Right.
So I was there for a little over a year, and then I just took a selfish leap of like, I want to live at the beach. This is the time to find a remote role to do so. So I ended up joining where I am now at Tula. We're fully remote, and I'm the HR person for all of Tula, but it's like the first like smaller startup-y type of brand that I've worked for versus like more of like a heritage brand under like a bigger affiliate that was very involved in it.
Wow.
So like the SparkNote version of my 10, 11 years in HR.
I feel like there's a lot to unpack there. First of all, I didn't understand that there were so many different facets to HR.
Yeah.
I thought there was just like HR, but you just listed off like so many different areas that I literally listened to. I'm like, my jaw is on the floor.
Well, every company's different. So if you're at a bigger company like a L'Oreal, you have separate teams who are doing like compensation, other people doing recruitment, other people doing HR business partner, which is what I've consistently been mostly, which is like more of the strategic piece of HR. But then at smaller companies, you have people doing everything, which I'm doing more of right now, which is like kind of covering every little piece of that. So it just depends where you work, what they cover. But yeah, there's many pillars.
And I see why they hired you for your current job, because you've had so much experience and you've done so many
Very
different
fortunate.
things.
Yes.
Which is great.
Yeah, I'm very fortunate that I jumped around, some intentionally, some not so intentionally, that ended up being a silver lining in the experience.
I love that. And thanks for giving us your background. So now that we know a little bit about your responsibilities, you said you do it all right now. So since we're kind of talking about new job, new year, all that stuff, what do you look for when reviewing applications? So someone sends in an application, like what stands out to you when you're reviewing?
Yeah, I mean, this piece is really not that groundbreaking. I would say it is when you are looking at resumes and when you're also making a resume, just a small piece of advice around it, you're trying to get the interview and you're not trying to get the job. So I'm looking at like, what do I need to seek out from this person to have a conversation with them about this role that they've done already, or maybe see what they haven't done within their breakdown of experience. But honestly, it is very shallow. You're looking at the companies they've worked at. You're looking at how long they've worked at places, which is changing a little bit because COVID, I think, made people jump around a little bit more. People understand like your compensation grows when you do go to new roles. So that is changing a little bit, and like it being a red flag if someone's had a job for only a year, but like if they've consistently for a long time only had short spurts, you kind of know that they're a jumper and they're not really like going to be a retention is what we like to call it, like someone we can retain over time and grow. You know, looking at what they're at currently, looking at experience before that, and just what industries they're in. I've only been in beauty. So like for us, we want to know that someone has either had beauty experience before or has been in consumer product goods, which is basically like selling a tangible product, not like tech where it's like invisible. I don't know.
You're not selling magic.
Yeah. So every job is different of what you need to look for, but I do hate to say that there's like no groundbreaking thing, that it is a very shallow process, and referrals are always preferred because it's someone who can like put in a good word about this person. But yeah, I try to be diverse in that I'm not going in alphabetical order, or I'm looking for like specific backgrounds, or I can search certain schools that I might want someone to come from that allows diversity. I've definitely tried to like get through some of that bias that does happen in recruitment these days. But when you're getting 500 plus resumes for a job, when you work at a popular or known company, you can't realistically get through every application and read through it.
And I'm also glad you said the thing about not caring as much these days about people being there for like 9 months or a year, because I feel like during the time of COVID, people like really started to realize what makes them happy in a job. And like 8 months in, if they're remote and they're not enjoying it, they're like, why am I here? And I feel like we had a little bit more of the jumping around to see what makes you happy.
Yeah.
Versus before, like pre-COVID, I don't think that people looked at that as much.
Yeah. And on the other end of it, layoffs are happening more than ever.
So true.
For some people, it wasn't by choice that their role has been shortened.
Yeah, same. Like here, me.
Yeah.
Hi.
Oh, yeah.
I was at a job for 9 months and then I got
Exactly.
laid off. So
Yeah.
I get it.
You actually just gave a good piece of advice, which is you're applying for the interview, not the job. When I had applied for jobs in the past, I think I was always applying to get the job and assuming I would just get it
doesn't?
versus thinking this is for me to get an interview.
Agreed.
I think that's a really good tip.
And I think women specifically, which I'm sure a lot of your listeners are female based, is we are so specific to job descriptions, like, oh, I've never done that, so I'm not going to apply.
Mhm.
And men are very different. There's actual studies around this. And it's just like, what? It won't hurt just to apply. It won't hurt just to interview. It's not like you're committing to, it's kind of like dating. Like, it's not like you're committing right away to like wanting this job or accepting the job. So as you're reading through experiences, you can also manipulate your resume. Manipulate is probably not the right word, but like tweak your resume to be fitting for certain jobs.
You told me that once and I was like, oh my God. I
Fake it till you make
I
it.
feel like I just learned so much.
Honestly, when I look at these documentaries of like WeWork and all these people who like faked to literally get
I know.
billion dollar appraisals, like you can
Yeah.
say that you're like, proficient in Excel,
Yeah.
even if you need to Google how to do a VLOOKUP. Like it will be okay.
I know. I had issues with that because I was in marketing for so long and I wanted to get into just strictly events. When I was in marketing, I did events, but people didn't take my event background seriously because it was like marketing first. So I spoke to you about it and you were like, you can take out, if I'm putting marketing and event manager, I can take out marketing and just put event manager and maybe people will look at my resume a little bit more seriously because I had so much experience, but everyone was like, oh, but it's marketing first. So they looked at it differently.
Yeah, where we as women are way too honest.
Yeah.
Overly honest.
So men are more ballsy when applying to jobs.
Ballsy applying to jobs, ballsy negotiating salaries. Which
Are we surprised?
do at some point? No, I guess not. I guess
We're
not.
not, but like I think as women, we're all women sitting here. That's
Yeah.
important to think about. Is
Mhm.
I definitely resonate with what Julia is saying about, women don't apply to things as often because they don't feel like they check all the boxes. Or I could see someone maybe just saying, it's good enough, I'm going to apply. And then they end up getting the job. Like you have to just put yourself out there.
So you are pro people going on an interview for practice?
Yeah. I mean, if it was me and you were wasting my time doing it, I don't love that. But like, you have to get practice.
Yeah.
So, if that's the way to do it, go for it for sure. Because I
Okay.
think, or it's kind of like applying to colleges. Like you have your like safeties and then you have your reaches, and it's like take opportunities with the safeties. If someone reaches out to you and it's like a lateral role and you just want to get experience of what they're asking, go for it. But I also think there's a lot of content and information online now though to help you navigate interviews and like the types of questions to anticipate. Also, like do that homework first, maybe before going into it. But if you're a nervous interviewer, not everyone is like natural at interviewing. If you're more introverted, you're not as successful in getting hired. So I do think you need that type of practice.
I'm not introverted, but I'm not a good interviewer.
I'm
I get
introverted.
super
That's you.
nervous.
Like you don't like public speaking.
Yeah, that's
right?
fair.
So
And here I am.
I'm introverted and I'm a really good interviewer.
Yeah,
Multiple people have
that's
said you're a very
interesting.
good interviewer.
That's so
Or
interesting.
you interview well.
I mean,
What do you
that's
think it
great,
is?
though.
Do you practice a lot or do you just go into it and wing it?
I go into it and wing it like most things.
That's
No,
me
like
too.
I'll research and stuff, but I
Yeah.
think there's some, and we talked about this in episode 3 when we were talking about putting yourself out there. I just think I know how to present well. Some of the best work advice I got when I was interviewing for jobs was from my dad, who said it's just a conversation. So taking that scary piece away of like, it's an
Yeah.
interview. I just realized it's just a conversation and I can talk to them like any human.
Yeah, and I think we're getting to it in a little bit, but the best interviews and my favorite types of interviews and the most likely of people to get move forward are the ones where it feels more like a conversation.
Right. Because
Yeah.
you can connect with them
Yeah.
versus like awkward silences,
Yeah.
working through a bullet list. you know.
I think I practice too hard, and then if it goes like array, I'm like,
Wait,
I freak out.
Can we talk about what is practicing too hard for?
I like
Also, what's a ray?
awry.
Wait, let's
Okay.
corrected the wording, but how do you practice too hard for an interview?
I practice too many like what could be questions, and then if they don't ask that, I'm not prepared for the ones they do ask. I freak out. So I probably need to like not practice as much.
Yeah, you think too hard about it.
Or maybe just like wing, like maybe just read over my resume, think about my duties, think about like a project I've worked on, things like that, versus like reading actual questions and having answers.
Yeah.
I've never done that. Like, think about the questions they're going to ask.
I think that's where I go wrong though.
Yeah. I mean, it's good to be prepared. What are the typical questions that people ask in interviews? Do you have a list and it's like you give it to someone new? They're like, these are the HR approved questions.
Well, you mean when they ask me questions at the end or questions that I ask them?
I guess if you're giving questions to a hiring manager to hire someone, or either way,
Yeah.
really.
I mean, in an ideal world, the way that we break it up is the hiring manager speaks to the business. Like, what questions do they need to ask this candidate to get a good idea if they are familiar with the business, they have experience in the scope of work they need to do, or in the potential to do what they need them to do, versus me is the culture assessment. So like, what is the style of work and like place of work that you're at right now? What are you used to with cross-functional communication? Are you remote? Are you fully in office? Like, is fully remote good for you? Are you used to like a heavy Slack culture where Slack and Gmail? Some people come from only Outlook and Teams. So those are the types of questions we ask, and that's kind of how we break up the sections of what we ask. And we have these like scorecards in our system that, you know, kind of make sure that we're staying on track of what we need to know to feel good about moving this person along to either the next round of the interview or to offer stage.
Oh, that sounds interesting. And what impresses you about people's answers, or like what is a way that people can do well in an interview?
I think being able to like tie things into other pieces. Like when someone finishes answering, I will help elaborate on like Tula perspective or like wherever I'm working's perspective, so that they understand like what may be different or what may be similar from what they just shared with me. And as you're going through the conversation or the questions, like them being able to tie things back to like, well, what you just said about Tula and how you operate like this, very similarly, I did this. So like I try to like throw them a bone to use and like work to their advantage. So that is always a plus. I think you can understand, I feel like, someone's work ethic too, and how they explain where they've identified opportunities and like what they've done. And like, for all you know, who knows if it's truly the case, but like, I feel like that's a good way to see their work ethic of how they can influence to like actually put something in place. Cause in my type of industry, being able to influence at every level is super important.
I like what you said about like relating it back to the job description, because people always tell you the job description on the interview. Like as soon as you get on the phone, the hiring manager goes over the job description, and I'm like, why is she telling me this? Yeah, I'm like, why is she telling me this? I read it online, but I guess it's because they want you to hear it on the phone, and like you said, maybe relate it back when you're answering your questions.
Yeah.
And I don't think I do that enough. I think I'm scared that I'm like, well, they're gonna think I'm only saying it because they said it.
Yeah.
Like classic me, obviously.
You're not alone. You're the majority in that, honestly.
But I think that's a good tip to like relate it back. They're telling you the job description for a reason. They want to hear how you can do the job.
Same with when they ask questions at the end to whoever the interviewer is. Once the person answers, tying it back to another opportunity to sell yourself. It really is salesmanship. It's like, how can you make yourself look like the best candidate?
Right. Okay.
And what happens if someone doesn't check all the boxes? So say they have really good concrete examples of the work they're doing in the job description, but they don't necessarily have experience in one area, and maybe it's an area for growth for them. If they're a really strong candidate but they don't have everything, does that mean they won't get the job?
No, it depends on, you have priorities of what your non-negotiables are. So for example, if you need beauty experience required because this person needs to understand Sephora and Ulta in my world, that's non-negotiable. But you don't want someone who's going to check off all the boxes, because that means they've done everything already. And it's like, how do you keep motivating them to be at this level for a little bit. They're not going to come in and be like, okay, I want to be promoted in 6 months, because you can't do that with new hires. They haven't been there yet to learn the full scope of business for the year to even consider promoting them yet, unless something changes internally in the business to promote them. A good hiring manager, a good recruiter, and a good HR person will hire for potential. You see that this person could reach 2 roles above where they are now and the role that they're going into. If this is someone that you can only see in the one role that you're hiring for, that's not an ideal situation. Sure, some people are like steady eddies and want to stay in the same role forever, and some companies are okay with that. I'm in an industry where that's not the case, because you're holding a spot for someone else to eventually grow into as they grow onto other opportunities within either the brand or other brands within the company.
That's really a good thing to hear, that you're looking for growth, because I know a lot of companies are, but sometimes they're not, like you said.
Yeah.
And if you are looking for a new job or something, like, it's good to think, oh, they're looking to beyond just the next promotion. You said the next 2.
Yeah.
Which I always just thought, like, oh, maybe grow into 1, but
Mm-hmm.
they're looking really for a longer term thing.
Ideally, yeah. I mean, it is an investment to bring someone on. There's money that goes out of the business to bring someone on, from salary to benefits to all of those things, that like you want to retain this person. Otherwise, you're molding this person to then go off into the world and take advantage of that knowledge somewhere else. That's not ideal.
You're hiring someone hoping that they grow within the company, whether that's 2 levels, whether they stay there for 15 years, whatever it is.
And from a junior perspective, like, we have to think about the world we were just in with COVID. And we have junior people who have never had an office experience, are just learning office experience. They can be super long-winded in their interview. They could be super casual in their interview. There's a borderline of appropriateness with that. But I personally try to be more forgiving and encourage my hiring managers to be more forgiving of the junior population, because like that's moldable. Like that's will versus skill. That's a skill set that
Totally
you can
fair.
teach them to be more concise, as long as they have the roots or baseline of what you need them to do.
I didn't even think of that.
Me either. These kids literally,
They've been remote.
They have been so screwed over.
they miss school, right? So,
Yeah.
Yep.
like my brother, he graduated during COVID. So he did 2 years in COVID. So he was living at home with my family. We all were. Then he graduated. Now he's into the work world. He just started going to the office for the first time, but he started doing his job remotely. Like, I'm thinking about it. We all are around the same age, so we had that experience
Yeah.
of going
We only knew an office.
interviewing in person, getting that job, going 5 days a week to the office, that culture, getting into it. I don't know how they're doing it. How are they adapting?
I wonder if it's easier because it's all they know. Like I don't know for you guys, but for me, it was really hard to adjust to working from home
No, it's
5
fine.
days a
I was
5 days a week, because I really like the in-office culture, especially like where we used to work. It was very like everyone was friends. You used to get lunch together. Like you can talk to your neighbor, you can talk to your desk mate, whatever it is. And working from home, I'm like, okay, this is kind of weird. I do like the hybrid though. I like going in sometimes and working from home sometimes. But if that's all they know, like they're probably fine with it.
we just had a in-person event, and we had different presentations throughout it. And for some, it was like, this is the first time I'm presenting live to these people, because we're all remote.
Yeah.
So via Zoom is very different. You have notes that you can easily look at on your desk. You have crutches in your physicalities that people might not notice when you present, whether it's like crossing your arms or things like this. And then when you're presenting in front of all these people live, it's a totally different experience that they have to flex to.
So for the new Gen Z employees that are going into these more junior roles, do you have any advice for them on things that you're seeing in common with new hires? Any tips that maybe can help them, whether it be in the workplace, getting a job? I know it's hard for them. It's hard for us right now.
Yeah. I would say for Gen Z employees that already have the job, my advice is to be curious. Be super curious. Ask to be added to meetings, because if you're not in that office space where like you can just naturally overhear things or naturally get pulled into meetings, you really have to force it more. And I think that's the best way to observe how certain levels operate and see a range of talent and how some people handle things versus others. and being able to have your manager observe you to give you feedback. I think people are very scared of feedback, and feedback should be used as fuel, not friction. And you need that feedback, and I think people avoid that opportunity a lot. For those that are trying to get jobs, I think it's being proactive in, and this isn't always going to work, especially for more bigger, more known companies, but like follow up with the HR person on LinkedIn after you apply to a role. Be efficient in it. Don't send like a novel. No one has time for that. It's kind of like a resume. Be concise and direct. Attach your resume onto that outreach. And honestly, as someone who does get a lot of applications, like I take that opportunity to put someone's resume on higher up on the pile, electronic pile, to be considered, then sorting through the hundreds that are in our what we call an ATS system, which is the back end where you apply.
That's great advice. I think it's really, like you said, hard when you're remote to like be integrated into certain things. So raising your hand for meetings and like raising your hand and being like, I want to be involved in this. Can I sit in on this meeting? Can I sit in on this, event? I'm just, obviously that's what I'm thinking of. Like I had one of my coordinators sit in on one of the events I was running virtually because I was like, it would be great for you to see this. You should do it.
Yeah, I
and
love
sometimes
that.
they don't even like think about it.
No.
And when we were in the office and I was young, I would hear my desk mate talking about the upcoming event or whatever. And I'm like, oh, can I help with that? Because I hear it and I'm there and we're in the office. So it could be really hard for them to just know what's going on if they're remote, or maybe they just like don't know, like you can just raise your hand and ask to be part of these things.
And every culture is different. It might be taboo in some companies versus others of like what you're getting an ear to, but it's not weird. Like what the worst they can say is no. It's like negotiating salary. The worst they can say is no, as long as you go into it with the right reasons.
I think I was the person that was afraid to raise my hand and say, can I help with that? Because I thought I had to stay in my lane and I would be tapped in as needed. Where like when I started as an assistant, I loved my job. I loved my boss, but I know that I was sitting at my desk all the time because she had a very busy schedule and I was like, I don't want to miss a call for her. But I wish going back I had asked to be in on more meetings because it would have been great to be a fly on the wall. I still got so much experience and I was so in depth with and involved with so many things, but I wish I did more and I put myself out there more in my first
I think you've done
younger
okay,
year.
Tori.
I did, but I do know that like I could have. I wish I knew I could ask.
Yeah. Of
Just
course.
sitting and listening, hearing the language, listening to how people talk is so helpful.
That's the thing. It's like listening to good people, what I call influence, or like in HR where you get some intense conversations, like hearing someone else navigate that that's how you learn in the moment. It's like when you go to school and then you're actually put into the real world, it's like, oh, all that stuff that I read, like now I have to actually like action it. You see it in action at work.
Totally.
Right.
Okay, so if there's like a non-negotiable for you, like we're talking about like working from home, all that stuff, and you're interviewing, should you bring that up in the interview if it's important to you, or should you just accept it? Should you talk about it later? Like what should you do if you have like some non-negotiables for yourself?
Yeah, I think in that context, it depends. Like if it's a hybrid workplace and they say, we're in the office 3 days and we're home 2 days and that doesn't work for you, I think it's fair to ask, like, is there any flexibility in that under certain circumstances? Or I think it's just finding out, like, is that something that's flexible or not? And if not, then it's just being honest of like, I'm not going to move, and you don't have to do it right in that moment. You can send a thank you email and just let them know in that as well, that like you're choosing not to move forward because it doesn't work for the work-life balance that you're looking for in, either fully remote, but like it's unrealistic to like interview with my brand and be like, but I want to be in office 2 days a week. It's like, we literally don't have an office. So like, what are we doing here?
That'd be me.
Yeah, but we're seeing it a lot of people either want to be in the office more or people want to be remote more. And I think it's important for there to be transparency between both the recruiter and the candidate to understand if it is the right fit to keep moving forward in the process, just out of everyone's respective time.
That makes sense.
Okay, so we talked a lot about getting the job and what you should do when you're applying and interviewing, but say you get the job and they give you an offer, but you are a little bit either disappointed by what their offer is or you expected more. How do you go about negotiating? And should you negotiate?
Yeah. So I would say from the beginning of your interview conversation, salary expectations should be discussed. There shouldn't be a surprise at the end of what you end up getting offered.
Right.
So as someone who interviews, it's one of my last questions to the candidate is, what is your salary expectation? And it's interesting how uncomfortable people still are with answering this question. And
It's awkward. They shift in their seat.
yeah. And
They're
I
like,
also, yeah. And I'm sure they may have had experiences with different recruiters that do make them feel crappy about
Yeah.
certain things. So that's the opportunity to say, like, this is the range that I'm interested in, or this is what I make and this is what I would like to make. However, they are comfortable with sharing it. And that's the time for me to say that is a little bit out of budget. I think we could get close to that, but maybe about 5K below, or let me go and see what I can do if I truly can go and see what I do. But if someone's coming at me with like a 20K gap, then I'm just honest of like, you let me know if you still want to move forward, but I just want to be transparent that that's not the budget that we have for this role. It's also different now with a lot of states being transparent in their applications or in the job description, like what the range is. And I think we'll get into that in a little bit. But, just trying to be as transparent as possible that when you get to the end point, if it ends up being like 5K off, that's absolutely a conversation to have of whether you want to have it in that moment or not. You can just say, thank you. I want to go back and review the full package and the full offer, because there might be some things that are compensating for maybe some of the gap that you have in your current role. So I would say just be weary of like, if you weren't honest from the get-go of what you wanted and then what they ended up giving you, that's a you problem. And I would be I get annoyed in situations like that where it's like, we talked about this the whole time. So
it shouldn't be a surprise.
Yeah. Unless they've been interviewing elsewhere and there's been like a change in what they're seeing in salary. But like, again, just having that open conversation, and hopefully you are comfortable in doing that with the recruiters that you are working with. There shouldn't be any question marks by the time you do get to an offer.
Right. And then they give you the offer. Are you able to negotiate? Should you try negotiating? I've heard varying things where everyone's like, yeah, you should always negotiate, or don't negotiate, just take the offer. There's sometimes a range.
Yes.
So let's say it's like, okay, it's between 75 and 100K.
Okay.
Depending on your qualifications.
Yes.
You go in and you're like, okay, well, this is the range, and they're offering me, say, maybe 80. Should you negotiate that up to say, can we do 90?
Yeah, I would say you can negotiate and you can have a conversation around it. If you're getting 80K in the range with 75 to 100, it's most likely because that's where you are in the experience level. Like, you are going to go in with some opportunity to grow into this level, which is probably going to eventually become 100K. But they don't see you at that super seasoned level just yet to justify going to the higher end of it. Okay. So there is some buffer built into these ranges for sure, of someone who may come in at a really entryway level to whatever it is versus someone who's coming in who's kind of like teetering off into the next level, but we want to bring them in and get a foot in the door to, this plan, maybe knowing there's a future evolution for them.
Mm-hmm. And I think for all of us too, like, we go into a job interview or whatever with a number in our head of like what we want. And if they match that, sometimes you're just like, okay, I'm not going to negotiate.
Yeah.
And I don't know if maybe that's necessarily the best move, but there have been times when it's been lower and I've asked for more and I've gotten it. So, I mean, you never know. Like, they could be offering the low end of the range, and even if it does hit the number you had in your head, negotiating maybe 5K more. Are there other things that you can negotiate, like PTO, other benefits?
Absolutely. So one thing you should consider is the bonus year. So say you are at your current job while interviewing for a new job. Your current job is going to pay out a bonus in January. You're looking for a new job in November. You get a job offer in November. You're going to lose probably your bonus in January if you leave. That's something to negotiate with your new employer of, hey, I'm walking away from this bonus. I'm anticipating it to be this much. Is there any opportunity for a sign-on bonus to compensate for what I'm walking away from if they're not willing to wait? And same thing with, say it's a January to December calendar year for bonus. You're joining this company in July, so you're only going to get half that bonus because it will be prorated. Knowing that you're walking away from half a year's work at another company and not getting that bonus and only getting half a year at the new company, asking for a sign-on bonus that's a little bit smaller than the full year, because you know that it will compensate for 50% of what you might be losing if you are in a bonus eligible role. So that's one piece. I think looking at your total reward, well, you can't always negotiate that stuff, but like PTO things, sometimes negotiable, sometimes not at companies. Like, most companies want to stay consistent in what they're giving people, but sometimes there is some buffer if it's going to, like, what's the saying? Like, soften the pot or harden the pot, whatever it is.
I don't know that saying.
I have no idea.
I
All
can't
my
help you
pots
there.
Yeah. If it's like the closer, they might be able to factor
Seal
in
the deal.
seal the deal.
Oh,
Sure.
there it is.
Yeah. So some companies are flexible with that, but I would say more times than not they aren't. But I would say like the bonuses, the bonus piece, the sign-on bonus, what your bonus percentage is. Sometimes companies have flexibility in that. So those are some questions worth asking.
Okay. And when you get an offer, I think it's a good thing to remind people it's not just the salary in the PTO.
Yep.
You also are looking at health benefits. You're looking at
401k matching.
Yep, exactly. So what are other things you should look at when you get an offer?
Yeah. Health benefits, looking at your current health benefits versus what you're going into. So what is the deductible for in-network and what is the deductible for out-of-network? So for example, my therapist was in-network at my old employer. She is now out-of-network.
I'm so sorry. That's so hard.
Yeah, she's now out-of-network and my deductible is so high that I will never get reimbursed for my services with her. So my salary had to offset that gap. So looking at who your healthcare professionals are and like if there's ones that you must stay with, whether it's a therapist, a specialist of some sort, factoring that into what you might have to pay more for or less for in the new role.
Mm-hmm.
And then what else to look at? Again, looking at the bonus piece is super important just so you're staying consistent year over year, if not more. Like you always want to be growing in compensation unless like you're consciously knowing that you want to move into a new function or role that you have to take a step back for that opportunity.
And then 401k investment for retirement.
Yep. That. Another one is pre-tax things. So pre-tax cards, pre-tax healthcare cards. More times than not, companies will have this, but if you're going to more of a startup company, they might not be sophisticated enough yet in what they're offering for that. And then one thing I will say, and like it's debatable and also cheesy, but like if you are going to work for an incredible person, like a job I took before this one, I took for the manager.
Mm-hmm.
There's no money attached to that. And I understand we're also in a time in this economy where money is so important. But if you're going to someone who's going to invest in you and like your learning, which is really hard to find these days, that's also something to factor in.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe it's not that big of a jump in salary, but like you're coming from a boss who is just lets you do whatever you want and doesn't give you much guidance, or you don't have a good manager. Like mentorship is invaluable.
I like that. And I also think if you get a good vibe on the environment, like I went from a job that I wasn't super happy at, and then I interviewed at another job and I got like a really good vibe, and I was like, I want to be happy again. Like I want to have that feeling where I'm excited to go to work and be excited around the people that I'm around. So to me, like that was worth it.
Yeah, culture is really important because you could find yourself in a situation that maybe from the get-go you don't think you're going to vibe with the company culture or your whoever the hiring manager is or something. And maybe that's a good lesson too, is let your gut tell you what your vibe check is for how you're feeling when you're interviewing. And like just like you're interviewing for the job, you're also interviewing the company, and you have to like it.
Yeah, you have to like it as much as they like you.
Yeah, I think sometimes, and I think more for our generation than Gen Z, we try to sell ourselves to the company.
Mm-hmm.
Like we'll flex to whatever you want to get the job. And I think that has changed very much so with Gen Z, but it's like, you're also interviewing them. It's not just what they think of you. Right. And I think we always lose that perspective of like, but it's kind of like dating. It's like, but did I like them?
Yeah. Is this mutual? Is the feeling mutual?
Yeah. Do you need the job, or does the job need you?
Right. And like you may seem incredible for them and they might get super excited about you, but you might be like, I'm not going to learn anything in this role though. That's why they like me so much, because I've literally done all of this already.
Yeah.
And you can sometimes get skewed by that. But then what are you leaving for if you're just going to do the same thing all over again? Like if you want to just do it but for more money, fine. But you're also stalling your growth by doing so.
Completely. Okay, so you look through all the things, everything makes sense. You're happy, you negotiated your salary, you're moving forward. Should you wait to quit your job, your current job? Let's say you're interviewing for a new job. Should you wait to quit your current job until you've signed all the paperwork, the background check has gone through? Obviously, you want to wait for like a written offer versus just a verbal offer, but do you need to sign everything? Do you need to go through the background check, everything before you quit? Or what do you suggest?
it would be wise to do so. It doesn't happen often, but there have been times where job offers get rescinded last minute. So you want to make sure that all of that's signed. I mean, the background check, if you have a clear background, like you don't necessarily have to wait for that. And most time offers are contingent on background checks. But if you have a clean record, then it should be fine unless someone's like stolen your identity. But
I get worried about that sometimes.
You know what? I mean, it's like, what are they going to find that I didn't
know that I didn't know.
Yeah, it's valid. I don't know. I'm always like, what parking ticket's going to show
Yeah.
up?
Right.
But I would say do not quit until you sign a physical offer letter. And if the new company is trying to push you to be like, so are you accepting? Just let them know. Like, once I get a physical offer and I can sign and look at everything, you should look at everything and be able to see everything before you do formally accept. That is super important and just the safe way to go about things. And like, again, you have to question an employer if they're really pushing you otherwise to
sign or to quit or
and just let them know, like, I can quit if they offer it on Friday. Just say, like, on Monday I'll have the conversation with my manager. That's when I'll give my 2 weeks notice, so anticipate I can start 2 weeks from now. But once I get the offer letter, I will like formally confirm everything.
Yep. And I think that happens a lot because I remember a job I accepted. I told them it was contingent. I was going to quit based on when I got the written offer letter. And it took them like days to send it to me. And I told them a start date originally. And I was like, we're going to have to push that. I have to give 2 weeks notice. I told you I can't quit until I have an offer letter in front of me. So I think if you need to push your start date, then that should be allowed too if they're taking a little bit longer on their end.
It is wild to me, though, that companies operate like that. Because you just dangled this shiny toy in front of me, and then you're going to make me wait 3 more days to actually physically see
have it ready.
Right? That's so strange to me. And again, like, those are things that are red flags to me at companies. And and I know HR teams are like smaller than they should be and things like that, but it should never take 3 days to get an offer letter. That's why.
Yeah.
So we talked a lot about getting a new job, but a new opportunity can also be in the form of promotion, getting manager experience. What is the way to kind of approach that if you're in a current role and you see an opportunity to get promoted or move up within a company?
Yeah, so I would say be smart about the timing that you're going to have this conversation. So like, my company has 2 times a year that we do promotions. So that is January and July. If you're going to go to a manager in July about a promotion for July, way too late. So I would say be smart about the timing that you're going to do it, and then also explaining and not in any specific order, but what you are doing so far in this role. What are you doing that's going above and beyond? If you have what we call a levels matrix, like a description of like a manager level versus a director level versus a coordinator level, always use like company facts to refer back to of, at a manager level, it says to do this, this, and this. I think I've exceeded in this, this, and this. It's always important to have that factual information versus emotional. I would say also, if it is for compensation and not level, it's doing your background on just some comp analysis. I think now more than ever, people are not gatekeeping what they're making in certain fields or posting places, what the ranges are. Also looking at open roles in states that do have to disclose salary ranges as a reference. My one big no-no is do not compare yourself to others at the company. You may feel, well, Susie Q, doesn't even show up for these meetings, and like, here I am running them and she's a level above me. You may feel that way, but that's not the way to go about it, throwing someone else under the bus or comparison. Comparison's a thief of joy. So
Thanks, Tinks.
I used that before she used it. So I would say like those are my 3 things. I don't think there's some cut and paste conversation. You have to make it sound like you when you say it. But I think it's just having an ongoing conversation so that it is a comfortable conversation because it's been discussed frequently. You can't just assume your manager is going to champion for you without you championing for yourself. You have to be the driver of your own career. And, it's wonderful to always see when managers do push for those things, and the employee is surprised, but I also don't think that that's right either. So just making sure that you're having those regular conversations so that you're getting feedback of, you may see yourself here, but here's a discrepancy that your manager sees, and to understand where they still need to see some improvement, whether you agree or disagree may be a different story, but more times than not, it should be a transparent, understanding, two-way street of like where there's opportunity, or the manager being realistic of what the timing could look like for you to in fact get a promotion. Like, we're too late for the July session at this point, but let's aim for that in January. Or I don't see that happening in July. I would like to see A, B, and C. So like, let's work for that all to happen leading up to January promotions.
It's interesting that there's periods. I didn't really think about that. And do you let your employees know on the greater scale, like, this is promotion period?
No, I mean, they know like the two cycles. We have year-end reviews and mid-year reviews, and that's when those two things happen. So it's not like we send out in September like, hey, heads up, if you want a promotion, this is the time to talk about it. But like, we'll say like in September, like, we're launching our review process. So
that's a flat, that's like kind of like a, hey,
yeah,
if we're getting prepared, if you're thinking of a promotion or if this is something you want, use this review process to kind of do what you're saying and give the examples of the work you've done and set yourself up for it to be easier to promote you.
Yeah. And like, we have people leave who are like, I was expecting a promotion, and we're like, whoa. Like, no one knew this. So
you didn't speak up.
Yeah, wish we had the conversation. Again, not that you should have to speak up if like you've earned it, but I just think there are some roles that get a lot of exposure that you can see what people do. And I think also being remote in my world is like a whole other layer. Like, you could be doing a zillion things and no one has any idea because we're not in the office.
Right. That's hard because you could be working really hard, and I don't know, maybe you're not in the office. I know there are different people of the mindset that if you're home, you're not working.
Right.
But you could be working nonstop.
Yeah. And there's so many decision makers in the promotion process that like it is a dance. I hate to say it, but like, it is a dance to make sure that the right people are spoken to for like on your behalf, or that you're speaking to directly on, what you are doing all year.
And as much as I hate those performance reviews at the end of the year, I feel like it helps your manager see what you're doing. Like you said, if you're working from home, they might not see everything. As much as I don't like writing about like what I'm doing all year, it does help them see like, oh, you've done a lot.
Yeah.
When you can like write it down and be like, I did this, you're like, wow, I did all of those things. But someone might not see it every day. So I think as much as they pain me, they're like a good check-in and resource to look back to be like, I did a lot of work this year.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot it could be a whole other episode about the review process, because I don't know if it's the right way, but like, it is the necessary way. But one recommendation I would give is have like a one pager, whether it's a OneNote or whatever, of like, as you're doing projects, like, write down so that when the time comes to do that review, you're like, oh, I did all of this, versus the day of you're doing your review and you're just like, oh, what did I do all year?
Yeah.
Like, we all do a lot, but we're moving so quickly we forget it. That just have that so that you have to be your biggest champion, so that you can like show in depth all that you accomplished throughout the year, or that you're part of, or you've had visibility to, or been pulled into. To make it as meaty as possible.
Yeah, I love that. And maybe put like a little calendar reminder on like a Friday. What did I do this week? Write it down on your one sheet, and then every week you do it.
For sure. I love that.
Like you said earlier, we're afraid of feedback. And this review period, whenever that is, mid-year, end of year, I think that the review process can be scary for people or cause anxiety because we are afraid, and it's like, oh, this is the one opportunity they're going to give feedback. But do you think it's good to like have dialogue throughout the course of the year? How do you encourage employees to communicate with either direct managers or their direct reports to provide feedback? And should it be a two-way street?
Yeah, it definitely should be a two-way street. What we ask our people managers to do and what we ask versus what actually happens is a different story. But in an ideal world, your weekly statuses should have a 5 to 10 minute development time. So whether it's giving feedback for the week or just an opportunity to discuss like, what does this direct report need more of? Just having that little window each week so that it's building up to that timeline of review, that those conversations are not groundbreaking when we get to the review time. Again, I understand that everyone is like overworked right now. Teams are small. So the reality is you're very stuck in your day-to-day, each weekly status. But we and my boss and I try very hard to stick to, though, like every week. And some week you may not have anything, but There's some weeks that I do have feedback for her, and there's some weeks that she has feedback for me. I love feedback, but I will lose sleep for like 3 days after you give me feedback because I'm a people pleaser. So like it's hard, but I want it. Like I crave it, but then when I get it, it's like, oh my God, I've disappointed someone.
100% with you.
And everyone's different with it. Like some people are avoidant with it and like, or they'll get super defensive.
And the delivery of feedback,
which is an art in itself. I don't think many are good at doing it. You have to flex to the person you're giving it to versus the way that you like to give it. It's kind of like love languages. Like you may be giving feedback in a way that you like to receive it, but is very different than how your direct report likes to receive feedback. So it's a very thoughtful process, and not everyone is thoughtful about it. Some people just do it in the middle of a meeting in front of other people, which is not great. Some people will do it over Slack, which also isn't great. Some people prefer it in Slack so they can refer back to it. I rather like in the moment, but in person, one-on-one.
I agree.
And I think on the flip side too, for managers, I think it's nice to hear when you're doing well too. Like I don't think people talk about that enough. Like your manager should be hyping you up and being like, you did a great job, like great email, great this. Like I love like hearing positive reinforcement. Like it makes me want to continue doing my job better. So I think like even if you don't have like negative things to say, like maybe just saying things like, oh, you did a great job on that project recently. Like I'm really proud of you.
Yeah.
Maybe you can even like loop in the negative feedback in there. Like you did a great job on that project. Maybe next time just blah blah blah. You know, like
they call it a feedback sandwich. It's like you go in with a positive, in the middle you give the opportunity, and then you end with a positive.
Yeah,
it's like the American millennial way. It's like no one can take just the feedback, myself included. It's like if you package it, but you have to be careful with that because if you did amazing on that event, you just want to make sure you're not losing what your feedback is. Like you want to make sure that it was clear that there was feedback there.
Totally.
Right? And a way to do that is also to have the person reiterate back, like, okay, like what did you take from this conversation?
Yeah.
I do that sometimes with performance plans. I'll do that when I have like hard conversations, just so people hear what they want to hear sometimes. But you just want to make sure you're not overdoing the positivity that you're losing the feedback that you want to give, which I think tends to happen often. It's like, well, I checked the box, I gave the feedback, but it's like, but did they think that they were like perfect and that was just like one little call out, or like, do they know that this is something that you want them to action on?
Right. Did they walk away knowing that they need to improve, or did they think they did amazing and there's nothing to change?
Yeah. And I mean, there's different levels of feedback. Like, you know, if you did an event and your boss is like, the event was incredible, like next time we just need to understand the admin fees a little bit more at event hotels, like something like that, then like that's not a big deal. But if there's something that you're seeing a pattern of that you need to work on, sometimes that's not the right way to go about it with the positivity. Like you don't want to just leave it all negative, but you want to make sure that it's very clear what you need to see more of.
Yeah.
Right. And that can be definitely, I mean, there's so much to talk to you about because this is just
have me back. It's fine.
I know. I'm amazed by all of the things that you do and all of the different ways that you do your job, and you have such great advice. So
thanks.
It's so great to have you on here, and I feel like we definitely have to have you back to talk about more.
Happy to be back.
There's so many topics
There's
we can get into.
There is, and I think HR has just evolved so much. Like literally just the word human resources. Like if you think about that word, it was literally like you're just a resource.
I want to call you corporate guidance counselors because the more you're talking, you are like a guidance counselor or like adult guidance counselor.
And COVID's evolved it because there's so much more of like a mental health element to it. You know, just one thing that people don't use HR enough for is like being a sounding board. We're not just here for onboarding, offboarding, and your review process. Like if you want to have a hard conversation with an employee and need a sounding board around it, like that's what I'm here for. And like that's my favorite part about this role is coaching people through tough conversations like that.
I think that's important for people to know.
Yeah, like we call our team people and culture at Tula because we're not just human, we're not just HR. And you know, people still call us HR, but my business is people. My business isn't Sephora, Ulta. I'm for the business of people.
Is HR for the company, the business, or is it for the people?
In an ideal world, it's a balance of both. But that's in an ideal world. So unfortunately, I think there's companies that have HR teams that do have agendas and are loyal to the business. My perspective is you can be for the business while also considering the people. So one example I could give in this that I hope is helpful context is like layoffs. So say there is a layoff, like a mass layoff of some sort, and mass could be just means more than one person. So it could be 2 people, it could be 10 people, whatever it is. If there is a layoff, there's a human way to go about it. It's not, hey, today is your last day. Best of luck to you. It's like, hey, we're going to make today your last day. We're going to give you 2 more weeks in lieu of notice. Obviously, there's some legalities of like what they do have to offer in severance, but just because that's what you have to offer doesn't mean that you can't offer more.
Right.
And I come from a place of like empathy with this situation, that when I do have the power to tweak and adjust, especially because of some circumstances of what you know is going on in people's lives personally, you might want to flex some of those things a little bit. So knowing that someone just recently had a new family member, you might want to factor in adding a little bit longer to insurance before they have to go on to Cobra. I don't want to get into much of literal terms, but like those are examples of, while there has to be some shitty parts of being in HR, like there is a human way to go about it. And that's where you balance both the business and the people. When it comes to like promotions and things like that, sometimes you're really rooting for someone to get a promotion and there's just not enough money in the wallet to allow for that. You have to deliver some unfortunate news. But again, there's a way of presenting it that like you can just be human about it. Like, listen, like Chanel, I know this sucks. Like, we were rooting for you here. We understand like what you need to do with this information, but like just know like these are the reasons why we can't do it. And just being honest. Like honesty goes a long way. That sometimes people are like, it really sucks I didn't get this, but like thank you for being honest, and that like I know it had nothing to do with me.
I'm having flashbacks.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Maybe you should have used me as an
Yeah.
example.
It's not a literal example. So, you know, I think at the end of the day, there's only so much power that HR does have. I prioritize in the places that I work that we do have a seat at the table. There's a million things that like we all wish we could do in our roles that you have to kind of streamline a bit and narrow down. But I do think there is a way to be both for the people or the business. If you're at a place that doesn't do that, like that's a bigger problem. And you have to prioritize, I think, a little bit where you look.
Right.
I like that question because I feel like a lot of people wonder, like, if I go to HR, is this going to be confidential? Like,
Right.
are they going to say anything to my manager or my employer, or like, are they on my side? Like,
Yeah,
I
you
think
don't know. Sometimes I think going to HR too, you're not sure if that's going to raise more flags. Is
Right.
it a good thing? Is it about like you're not? You say you're the guidance counselors, but at the same time, you're not really the guidance counselors. So it's like you can't go with every little inconvenience or disagreement with the company, right? But there are things you should be going to HR for.
Yeah, I always say like, unless this is like, you know, a danger to you or others, like I will do my best to keep this confidential. But if it is a part of a pattern, a bigger pattern that we're seeing, then like sometimes there has to be a little bit of action taken. On the other end of that, sometimes people use HR as the messenger, and you have to empower them to say like, you know, what are you going to do about this? Or like, how can I help you with resolving this? And helping them navigate a conversation that they need to be having directly. And I think the type of people in HR we want to, again, people pleasers, it's like you want to just solve the problem for them, but it's just enabling them to continue on without having these difficult conversations that are going to benefit them.
That makes sense. And I think this is like kind of segueing into a few questions we got from listeners.
Love that.
So we want to do a quick speed round with you, probably like 5 to 10 minutes. We're just going to ask you some listener questions. You can just answer in a few short words, like your thoughts.
Okay.
We kind of touched on this before, but I'm just going to read this question and, you know, you can maybe like reiterate, or maybe there's like a different part of it. But this question says, a friend applied to a role at my company. She's fully qualified. She had a great convo with HR, except they told her the low end of the salary range listed in the job posting and that there was no wiggle room, even though the salary range listed in the job posting was a $25K difference. Curious what this means regarding the larger scale and impact of New York's new law, including the salary. So like we said before, it's like a new law that you have to have the salary range on the posting. If there is no potential of earning the highest salary on the range listed, why are they even listing it? Is this allowed, or has the law created a flawed system for false salary transparency?
Yeah, so I think it goes to your point. What we said earlier is that range goes into someone who's being considered that's at an entry for that level or very seasoned in that level. So wherever they're landing you within that range, again, it's a range. So they can offer you whatever is in that range. It's where they see you in experience for that specific job. And you can challenge that for sure of like, this is what it says in the job description. Like, this is what I've done, but they are allowed to offer you whatever is within that range.
That makes sense.
The next question we have from a listener is about feedback. So the question is, if you work at a small company, so no HR department, what are best practices on informing a colleague that their management skills need to be improved? Recently, a junior employee came to me with some legitimate complaints about her manager. I know the manager is doing his best, so wanted to give him some specific feedback, which is usually easier to act on. I also don't want to betray the trust of this junior employee. Help.
Yeah, so it goes back to the whole thing of when people come to me, but they don't want me to then say anything. It's like, how do you expect change to happen then? So you have to kind of, as this person submitting the question who had this junior employee go to her, it's asking like, what hat am I wearing right now? Am I wearing a hat of you want me to listen and action on this for you, or you just need me to be a sounding board to understand what their ideal situation is and resolving? One way to give the feedback to this employee that is being spoken about, the junior person that needs the feedback, the best way to usually approach that is to give specific examples and to say like, when you blank, it's making blank feel blank. So, but facts are always best. It's scary, especially for junior employees when they do come forward with these things and they think that they're going to be retaliated against. If you want to be really literal with it, it's assuring the employee like there's zero tolerance for retaliation in any workplace. And I think it's also when you do give that feedback, it's making the person know like, such and such was a little nervous about this. They're coming from a good place. They really enjoy working with you. I just think they weren't sure how to navigate this opportunity. But, I understand wanting to be sensitive to not breach confidentiality.
She's also junior, so maybe the person in this instance is figuring out how to know that they have a voice and can speak to their manager.
I think there's different ways to approach it. It could be this person who submitted the question just gives the person who needs the feedback a heads up, like, hey, I think such and such wants to talk to you, just to kind of set the tone, but then giving the opportunity for the person to give the feedback, or saying like, would you want me to be there while you give them the feedback? There's a few ways to approach that one. They can reach out to me directly if they want.
Love it.
Context.
Okay, this is the next question from a listener. If there is an issue with HR, such as HR is the problem, how should you document the process as the employee? Should you have your own receipts? What should you do?
Always having receipts is good. It's intense. So it depends on the intensity of how you want to approach it. If you want to just kind of flag it first, have examples, and then just say like, I have, emails to help back this up, or I have emails if you want to review them. When it comes to who to go to when HR is the problem, I would say whoever the head of HR reports into. So, for us, that would be the CEO. For others, it's, if it's a head of HR for a division or a brand, it's going to that person's HR boss. So it depends how big the company is on who you need to go to. But I would just say whoever the head of HR reports to. But go through the layers first. You don't want to go to the CEO when there's maybe 5 other layers you need to kind of like talk through first. But if it's like in general the whole HR team that people are feeling like a lack of trust around, or there's like multiple circumstances with different people in HR, I totally understand why you would need to jump to that level.
Great.
Okay, we already talked a lot about getting a promotion and the language you should use, but what's the best way to ask for a raise?
I would say it kind of goes back to the conversation we had before on timing, and then also explaining your current scope, what you're doing that exceeds the current scope, because you always want to show like you're going above and beyond, like you're not just doing what you're being asked to do, like you've taken on extra. So like, what are those extra projects? Are you covering for someone who either like left the company or is on leave? So just explaining like, what have you been doing extra that you want to justify an increase of compensation on? If it's purely you just don't feel like you're getting paid competitively at this point, then do your background research on like market analysis of comp. So like Glassdoor is helpful with that. There's some like social media groups that like are very open with this. I mean, for God's sake, even on TikTok, people are like doing these like don't gatekeep your salary videos. So there's ways to navigate. I think people are more like I said before, are more transparent than ever with like what they're earning, looking at open roles now and showing what they're offering, especially within your own company. That's always enlightening to see like, hey, like that's literally like my peer and you're asking for 10 grand more in that range. So just, again, it's always facts over emotion.
That's hard sometimes.
It's hard. It's hard. But again, the worst they can say is no.
Yeah.
And do what you will with that.
And all that's damages your pride and your ego and your dignity.
And I always tell people as an HR person, like, I admire when people come to me and when they approach it so maturely and professionally. I'm going to work harder for you.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're going to come to me and just say like, I just got a dog, I just moved, I'm using myself as an example, and like, I just need more money, I'm going to be like, those were all your life choices.
Right.
But if you're like, I am just at a point that like, economically, it doesn't make sense to still be at this range. And like, can I take on more to justify getting an increase? That's also a way to go about it if you do just need it from an economical circumstance.
Okay, last listener question. This is a two-parter. How can employees use HR more like a toolbox to help further their career opportunities as opposed to only interacting with HR when it's necessary? Examples, conflict, benefits, salary, etc. And in doing so, could we get to the point where we potentially change the dynamics within the workplace to view HR staff more like teammates as opposed to a separate, isolated department?
I love this question so much because that is like my dream for my role, my place in the workforce.
Mm-hmm.
I would have to say, to get to that point anywhere, and there are places that are at that point, it's really senior leadership and how they view HR and the people team. So if they're going to them just after the fact of decisions, they're not partnering them in. So that creates a ripple effect on how other team members are explained about HR and how they utilize HR. I think in my role, like, I absolutely am used as a sounding board, but I think that comes with trust. And I think, ironically, I think HR people have to show that they are human sometimes, because it can be sometimes a very transactional role.
Mm-hmm.
And you can get very transactional people, like checking off a box. They want to do more of the back end work and not have conversations, because it's not cut and paste every conversation. Like, you have to be able to tweak and cater and shift how you explain things to the person. It's like giving feedback, and it's a talent, and it's something that I work on every day, and I overthink every conversation, and I use my boss as a sounding board of like the dialogue I had on how to better it, and you just get better over time. Like, I cringe at the initial conversations I've had as like my early years of HR, but that's anyone's job. Like, if you think back to like when your first year in your job and the mistakes you made or the things you told people, you're like, oh God,
Totally.
like, how did that even come to life? Or how did I, like, not get in trouble for that? Or I did get in trouble and it was warranted. But, it takes exercise. But I think HR people have to build trust with their population, and they have to really make the effort. And ways to do that, and ways for employees to do this with HR, would be setting up meetings with them, just because. And I think I always try to preface in the body, like, informal meeting, because then people think they're getting fired.
Yeah.
When I do an impromptu
Good
meeting.
for you for doing that.
So I just put in the body, like, just an informal meeting, nothing to prepare.
You're not getting fired.
Yeah. So I
It's
think
kind of like a check-in. Just how are you doing?
yeah.
That's nice.
So you want to have a pulse on what's going on in the business. Like, you want to be able to always speak on behalf of how someone's doing, or anticipate if someone's manager just left, or like there was like 2 people who just left that are peers, and this person's about to take on a lot more while we recruit for these roles. Like, set up a meeting with them. Like, they just need like to just be checked in on. And sometimes they have nothing to say, but they just appreciate the check-in. It's a hospitality role. So this is more advice for HR than it is for this person. But I would just say for this person, like, what are opportunities for you to build that trust with your HR person, or what do you need, and to share that with your HR person in order to feel like you have that trust. But I just want to be honest that, like, it is really hard to find HR people who, 1, have a seat at the table, and 2, have both the mindset of being transactional when needed, and also a sounding board.
Yeah. And it becomes sometimes like a relationship where you feel on edge when you're around them. Like, if you're at like a happy hour or something, and like an HR teammate is there, you're like, what can I say?
Like,
what can I say?
I'm not
It's
gonna
like
lie.
It's like you're, you're at a happy hour, and then HR shows up and like everyone leaves.
You don't want it to be like that.
But I still leave my holiday parties early, because I know that no matter what, people are going to be on edge or be mindful of what they say. And those are the times people like do their bitching sessions and stuff like that. So like,
Right.
you know, I just personally don't want to be around it because then it's like I'm accountable for whatever information I do get, and people have loose lips after they drink.
That's true.
But I think I would like to say that my teams trust me, and like I think that's something that they also respect too. That like I gave them that break, and I'm not trying to be like gotcha at these events either.
Are there things that HR doesn't do? Like there have to be boundaries, right? It can't just be like you go to you as a sounding board for everything. Like kind of what
They're
are
not
the
therapists.
Yeah, right. But
Well, yeah.
what are the soft boundaries? Because you still have to support the company and the people. What are they?
Well, I would say when it comes to boundaries of like the level of what they're coming to us for, and COVID was a really tough time with this because everyone was going through their own thing, whether it was mental health or just adjusting,
And they're still going through it.
they're still going through it. But it was getting, some were getting to a point of like, I am not certified to help talk you through this, and I have to then provide resources to lead them to people who they can talk about this stuff with. If someone's coming to me super frequently with stuff, then it's a boundary of like how often you can meet with me on this topic. And if it's you're just coming to me and you don't want me to do anything about it, you have to draw a line eventually of like, I understand that this is something that's frustrating you, but until you allow me to work with you on how to resolve this and take action, like there's nothing more I can do here.
As someone that struggles with mental health, is it good to let HR know these things? Or if you're going through a tough time in your life, say a family member just passed away, or there's a significant change, should you inform HR of these things?
I would say, yeah, everyone's different with it, but I call it masking. Like, you shouldn't have to mask what you're going through at work. If you're using it as an excuse for everything, that's one thing. But if it's like you are going through, like last year, I went through a lot of things at once, and I had to give my boss a heads up of just like, I am not myself right now. And, you know, just, I need you to not call me out, but like, I just need you to check in if like something is dropping, because I just don't have the mental capacity for all that I'm normally able to right now.
Oh, good for you. That's hard.
It is really hard, and I'm fortunate that I have a boss and team who I feel comfortable doing that with. But sometimes it takes a little bit of influencing for people to understand like what you're going through, and that's the importance of empathy in the workplace, though.
And I think providing resources, like you said, is probably really great for employees when they come to you because, you know, like you said, sometimes you're not certified. So I think giving them a place that they can go to and recommendations of where they can find help or other people they can talk to is great. Do you have any that maybe you want to share? Any websites, any resources?
I would say a resource that a lot of people have in their company that they don't often know about or use enough is the Employee Assistance Program, which is offering X amount of sessions with a therapist within your network for free. And then after that, then it's part of like your deductible or network plan. Because that way it helps connect you with a mental health professional. It's at a lower cost, and it's connecting you with someone who can talk about what you need. You have probably more resources than you know you have with your benefits. And whether you're on medical insurance or not, it's usually just a benefit from being with the company. So I would just do a little bit of digging of whether it's in your onboarding documents or just reaching out to your HR person for another snapshot of what your benefits are in that sense. When it comes to just like, you know, other content that's helpful, one thing I like to listen to a lot is the Happiness Lab on Spotify. It's a podcast, and it's a lot about like, you know, negative talk and things like that in the workplace. So for like some self-help things, I would recommend that podcast. And then also
that.
Glad We Talked.
Yeah.
I love that so much. I speak for both of us when I say we really enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah, I want to definitely, Chanel, I'm just going to say this without you. I definitely want to have you back, Julia, because this whole time I feel like I've just learned so much, and I'm so happy that you were able to join us and give us this wealth of knowledge and share it with our listeners.
Yeah.
As our first guest.
I know.
love talking about this stuff. It reminds me how much I like love HR.
You seem so excited when you talk about it.
Thanks.
Yeah, the way you talk about HR and you truly are passionate about this, it's just really great to see that you're loving your career.
And it's inspiring. Do you want to like plug anything where people can find you if maybe they want to reach out to you directly?
You can find me in Asbury Park on the dog. If you want to reach out to me directly, you can absolutely reach out to me via Chanel or Tori, or I'm sure I'll be tagged on this podcast. It's Jules, Julas _PORPORA. My email is juliaporpora@gmail.com. But if anyone has like an individual, whether it's someone who asked one of these questions or not, like I love this stuff, so happy to help. I also do side resume help, interview coaching. So if anyone needs any help or support with that, more than happy to partner up in some way, shape, or form to do so.
I love it. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks. I love you both. I'm so happy to be here. I'm honored to be your first guest and happy
Yay.
to come back whenever. I'm so glad we talked.
We're so glad we talked too.
Yay.
So good. Do you want to plug all our stuff?
Yes. So thank you all for listening. Thank you for writing in your questions. As always, you can DM us or reach us at Glad We Talked Podcast on Instagram and TikTok. Email us at gladwetalkedpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you so much for all of those emails we've been getting in. It's so nice to hear from everyone. And yeah. Oh, also, Chanel.
Leave a review for us.
Yes.
We have like 17, I think, on Apple Podcasts.
And a few on Spotify.
And a few on Spotify. So whoever did that, thank you. We really appreciate you. But if you like it and you're enjoying what you're listening to, leave a review for us.
Yeah. Thank you so much. As always,
Glad we talked.
so glad we talked.
Bye.
Bye.
That was super quick.
Gotta keep it short, sweet, to the point. Beep. Stop. Yes.